Hello, and welcome to When We Fight, We Win, the podcast.
My name is Dey Hernandez.
And I'm Greg Jobin Leeds, and we are the authors of the 2016 book, When We Fight, We Win. In When We Fight, We Win, Dey and I and so many others capture some of the stories, philosophy, tactics, and art of today's leading social change movements in the United States.
Welcome to this series of special live episodes that we have launched in response to the pandemic. When we fight, we win life, mutual aid and solidarity in times of crisis is how we're calling this series. We hope you'll join us on Zoom and Facebook Live every Wednesday over 2 more weeks at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We thank you for being here. During this episode, we will begin by interviewing our guest, and then we'll share some questions from you. We encourage that you post your questions on the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom. We would love to hear from you.
These are such difficult times for all of us, and we know that this pandemic is particularly difficult for recent immigrants, especially those who are undocumented or even worse, who are in detention centers. So in today's live episode, we'll speak with a dear friend and colleague for many decades, Patricia Montes, la directora de Centro Presente, the director of Centro Presente. Centro is a member-driven, statewide Latin American immigrant organization dedicated to the self-determination and self-sufficiency of the Latin American immigrant community of Massachusetts.
Bienvenida, Patricia. We're so happy that you're able to join us.
We have organized all of our interviews into 3 chapters: the pain, the fight, and the win. Chapter 1, the pain.
I just want to mention that the immigrant community has been facing a crisis for a very long time. And it has been facing a crisis that has been invisible within the conversation about immigrants and immigration in the United States, especially what has been happening with Central American countries. According to the UN, most of the people that are trying to cross the border right now between Mexico and the US are coming from very specific countries, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Every year, according to the UN, 500,000 people try to cross the border as an undocumented immigrant and try to come to the United States without proper documentation. 400,000 of them are coming from Central America. So that means that we have been facing a crisis for a very long time. And to answer your question, the answer is no. The undocumented population are receiving very few resources and very few chances to, get tested. We have some members, actually. I can at this point give you a specific information, of course, because confidentiality, but we have some people that have been telling us, I had symptoms and I'm afraid to go to the hospital because I don't have immigration status, because I'm afraid that something can happen with me and my family because I don't have documents. And it's very sad to hear that. But why is this happening, right? Because, of course, the system, not just the healthcare system, but the economic system is right now uncovering that for the system is a priority profit than basic human rights. So that's exactly this global pandemic is telling us, is uncovering that system that for decades have been prioritizing profit over basic human rights, like healthcare, like access to food, for example, housing, that should be human rights. But unfortunately in this country, right, that is the most powerful country in the planet, ironically, healthcare is not a human right, right? Because the system is private. We don't have a system that is public that can protect the rights of everybody, especially undocumented immigrants.
Absolutely. Thank you, Patricia. Definitely crisis unveils, right, how the system has been failing for forever, right? Tying up to that question also on healthcare, can you explain a little bit about the mission of Centro Presente, how the work that you do there, and even like the connection with providing that healthcare or fighting for that healthcare?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Centro Presenta is an organization that, as Greg said, having around for almost 40 years. We were founded by a Catholic nun that during the 80s was doing a lot of work in Central American countries, especially in Guatemala and El Salvador during the civil conflict in these countries, where during the civil conflicts, as you know, many people were fleeing violence, especially from El Salvador and Guatemala. After 12 years of civil conflict in El Salvador, 75,000 people died during that civil conflict in El Salvador. 500,000 people were displaced internally in El Salvador, and another 500,000 had to flee. Many of them came to the United States, and some of them came to the city of Cambridge, where Centro Presente was founded, to receive and give support to these migrants and refugees that were coming to the United States as a result of the civil conflict. They were looking for international protection, and of course, they came to the United States. So during that time, Centro Presente was doing a lot of work against the U.S. political and military and economic intervention in Central America. Since then, we have been doing that too, not just supporting migrants in the United States through our programs, but also trying to share with people a little bit more about why people come from Central America and have been coming over the decades from Central America as a clear result of all the policies that the U.S. have been implementing in Latin American countries. So now we provide legal services, but we also do advocacy and organizing in order to protect the basic human rights of migrants.
Thank you. Can you explain a little bit about that member-driven organization to folks that might not be familiar with that?
Thank you for asking. And I know that Greg mentioned that with a very specific emphasis. The thing is that Centro Presente is composed and is driven by immigrants, especially Central Americans, Centroamericanos. Our board of directors, our staff, our director, as you can see, are all immigrants that are coming from Central America. Because when we think about this idea of empowering the community, the idea is that you're going to have members of the community, working with the community and with the community, hand by hand. That's the idea of that Centro Presente has in terms of empowering the community.
Gracias. Yeah, we know that the US runs the largest immigration detention system in the world. And we would like to know what are the legal implications for migrants during this unprecedented situation with all those travel bans, the border closures. Have deportation been suspended at all?
No, unfortunately, no. The detention and deportation machine is still in place. And unfortunately, there is not a good protocol right now that is in place to protect basic human rights of migrants that are in detentions right now. And I think it's important that you mentioned that it's a profit too, because there are corporations behind the incarceration of migrants and Black and brown people and of course migrants too. And I want to mention that there are two corporations that are making a lot of profit with the suffering of migrant communities, and they are making a lot of profits incarcerating migrants. And I'm talking about the CoreCivic and the Geo Group. These two corporations have been making millions of US dollars with the incarceration of migrants. And I think that it's extremely important also to highlight that we have been fighting before this pandemic for like a moratorium and detentions and deportations, because people have been suffering for decades.
Thank you, Patricia. Recently, the government announced $1,200 payments to support eligible workers, right? Or eligible taxpayers during the time of crisis. Is there any help for undocumented immigrants in the wake of massive unemployment?
Thank you for asking. The short answer is no. Once again, undocumented immigrants are being excluded by the United States. And I think that it's important to mention that there are some people, of course, people with documents and low-income people that are going to be benefit. However, in our opinion, it's not enough, because the ones that are going to be receiving millions are once again the corporations. And I think we need to denounce the fact that undocumented immigrants are being excluded. excluded from this economic package, and it's not necessarily going to benefit low-income people in the United States. It's not going to be enough. It's just going to support big corporations.
Right. And we know that our food and most of our basic needs are supported by undocumented workers. So what is the situation for undocumented workers during the pandemic? And I mean, those who are being forced to work, and also workers who are being put into dangerous situations without any regard for their health and safety.
Thank you. I think it's very important to also recognize two things. What are the challenges that undocumented immigrants are facing right now, and also the message that we're sending across, right? People are saying, stay home. But we recognize as Centro Presente that message is privilege, right? Staying home, like exactly what are we doing, is a lot of privilege. And we have to recognize that our members, they don't have the privilege to stay, to be at home, right? They need to go out to provide, in order to provide for their families and work. And they are right now, you know, with very little protection. And some of them, because they don't have documents, they are losing their jobs. And of course, they are not going to be able to pay rent because they are losing their jobs as a consequence of what they are facing right now. And of course, there is a lot of food insecurity. Some of them, they need to go to ICE check-ins. If they don't go to ICE check-ins, they are going to receive a deportation order immediately because the detention and deportation machine is still in place. So there are many challenges that they are facing. It's not just about losing their jobs. It's not just about not having enough food for the children. It's also about facing a potential detention and deportation.
Right. And speaking about ICE, or the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they have admitted that a few of their agency employees and detainees have already tested positive for coronavirus. I think it was 19 last time I checked. But can you talk about the dangers of coronavirus transmission in ICE detention centers?
I think that transmission is real. A lot of people are infected. Actually, the last time that I checked, they were saying through the media reports that there were 23 people, including children. However, we don't trust the data because we don't think that ICE is giving us official information about what is really happening inside of the detention centers. And it's something that we are requesting. We would like to have more information coming from ICE, specific information about what is going on with migrants at the detention centers, how many people are being affected, and on top of that, what are they going to do to protect the basic human rights of people at detention centers. And the other thing that is very important to mention is that they are also deporting people to Central America and many other countries like Mexico. Some of them were already infected. So that means that they are sending people to Central America and Mexico. They are sending these people to countries that are not prepared to deal with this crisis.
Thank you. And we know and recognize that the workers have been self-organizing, and Centro Presente has been doing a lot of that work. So we're going to go to chapter 2, the fight.
So, and to anybody who's joined us recently, we are here with Patricia Montes, who's the director of Centro Presente, working with Central American immigrants. And this is When We Fight, We Win Live. So, Patricia, I've been involved with Centro Presente for over 3 decades now. And I think it was in 1980. I think it was in 1988 when I first got involved. And, you know, in some ways, it seems like things have never been worse. Trump's immigration policies are clearly an assault on the most vulnerable, and undermines the efforts to support communities to contain the virus. And then on the other hand, many states are beginning to release some people who are in custody, and it seems we have a great opportunity. So my question is about a recent letter that Centro Presente released about love and solidarity in the time of Corona. Can you tell us what it's about and what's some of the fights that are going on right now, please?
Thank you, Greg. And I want to take the the moment and acknowledge the fact that you have been involved with Centro Presente before me and before many other people. You were supporting the organizations in the 80s, so you know very well not just the struggle of Centro Presente, but of the Central American community, migrants and refugees. Yes, I just want to say that it has been very hard for us and many other organizations, of course, to reimagine how are we going to organize and how are we going to continue working with our communities during this time, because I think that the work that we do is is to connect, making connections with the community. We do, home visits, for example. We're not able to do that at this point. However, we're trying to support the community with the few resources that we have and trying to reimagine how are we going, reimaginando how are we going to work with the community, right? So, but right now, one priority that we have is to make sure that members of Centro Presente and other members of the community are going to be able to go to the office of ICE in Massachusetts that is in Burlington, right? Many of them are recent migrants that recently crossed the US and Mexican border and came to the greater Boston area. And they need to go to ICE for something that they call ICE check-ins. So we're making sure that our members are going to be able to go to ICE to do their ICE check-ins. So we're trying to make sure that they go. That's one priority for us. The other thing is that we're trying to continue making the connections between our members and pro bono lawyers or organizations that are going to be able to provide legal support for them because they need legal representation. As I said before, the detention and deportation machine is still in place. So they need legal representation. So that's something that we have been doing, but we definitely are going to continue doing it because we have a lot of people that need that, especially women and children that recently came to Centro Presente as refugees, and they are looking for international protection, and they are living here in our communities, and they need that kind of protection. The other thing that we're doing is that, of course, we know that people need food and healthcare. So we're trying to connect our members with other organizations that are going to help, I hope, and provide, basic needs like food and healthcare. We're, having conversations with the local clinic in order to make sure that if this is our members are undocumented, they know that they can go to their local clinic and receive health care if they have symptoms.
Wow. So people can go, undocumented people can go to the clinic and without being in fear?
That's what we have been having conversations with the local clinic, at least here in East Boston. And according to them, people can go. It doesn't matter if they are undocumented. They can call. The protocol is that they need to call first if they feel that they are sick, if they feel that they have the symptoms. Right. And they are going to, the local clinic here at East Boston, they are going to share with them how the protocol is. But according to them, they can definitely go to the clinic. So that's something very important that we celebrate that they are doing that, because at this time, I think that they should be doing that all the time, not just when we're facing this pandemic, right? Because as we said before, healthcare should be, it's a human right. But I think it's extremely important to highlight that at least here in Boston, they are doing that, and it's extremely important.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. I'm heartened, and yeah, of course, everybody should call before going in, but including recent immigrants. So can we talk for a second about communications? Because I know you have your radio program, and it's been a really challenging time, and the government's messages have been pretty divisive and confusing in this pandemic. So could you tell us a little bit about Centro Presente's radio program and how it's helping them get out information to your listeners to navigate in this crisis?
Definitely. So for the past 20 years, we have been producing a small radio show in Spanish and Espanol, where we are able to share information about immigration with our community. And unfortunately, I want to share with you that a member of the radio, not from our team, but a member from the radio team was infected, was tested positive with COVID. So we're not able to go to the radio. So, but right now we're recording and using, an online platform to continue doing a radio show in order to make sure that we're informing the community. So we're inviting experts, especially people that are working, with local governments with resources, with other nonprofits that can share with our members information about where they can find food, healthcare, and many other needs that people have at this point. You know, a lot of people are asking about unemployment. A lot of undocumented immigrants are asking about, I'm going to receive support with this new package. So there is a lot of information that people need at this time, and we're able to share that information to our radio show and, you know, using the new online platforms.
Awesome. That's great. I'm so glad you have that, and that your members are able to access it. And so, I mean, especially since now more than ever, being connected is a tool for survival. And in terms of being connected with other organizations, you know, what are other organizations that you're working with that are part of your mutual aid and solidarity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, I was having a conversation with a really good friend, Natalisa Tracy, who is the director of the Brazilian Workers Center, for example. We're trying to, you know, put together a group of organizations and see if we can receive some support, financial support from the city of Boston. But this is something that I can't share because it's kind of confidential at this point. But we're, you know, trying to work together in order to find resources to support communities. I think that's extremely important. We're also trying to organize an action tomorrow because this is going to be online. I can't share that information right now, but, you know, we're, you know, trying to see how we're going to work together, continue working together in order to face this crisis.
Well, if you want to share it with us, then we can share it with our audience, and we'll put it on our social media and our website.
We can definitely do that.
Awesome. All right. And then I wanted to ask about the most common mistakes that people like me and many in our audience who want to help in this fight. What are some of the most common mistakes that those of us who want to be in solidarity with Central Americans make?
Well, that's a hard question, but you know me, I'm very direct with people. Don't be paternalistic. I think that's very important for us, you know, because we don't see, I think that for us at Centro Presente, we're always thinking about the difference between charity and social justice. And I think that we have been able to work with you because you see us not as, like in Spanish we said pobrecitos, you see us as people that also are fighting. You know, we are in the fight, and we are in this together. We're fighting in order to change the system. And I think that's extremely important, that allies see us as a agents of change, not as pobrecitos, you know, like, and because when we're trying to empower communities, that's the idea, to work together in order to change the system. Even if you're giving a donation, just think that you're giving that donation to a person that is also going to be part of the change that we're trying to achieve.
Gracias, Patricia. Part of why we're doing this live is that we're actually would love to hear from the audience to make questions directly to Patricia. The way of doing it in this platform is actually there's I believe it's in the bottom, the Zoom Q&A section. Write your questions there so we can have them directly here answered by Patricia. And you see, one of our producers are gonna select those questions, and then we're gonna present them again. One more question before we go to the chapter 3. It's like, is there a name for that radio station or the radio program? I'm sorry, that Centro Presente has?
Sure. Yes, Al Día con Centro Presente.
Al Día con Centro Presente, and people can reach the radio station using.
Yeah, they can go to our Facebook page, and they can now watch the show through our Facebook page on Tuesdays at 1 p.m.
Thank you. All right, so we're about to move to the chapter 3. It's called The Win. We're here with Patricia Montes, again, the director of Centro Presente.
So, Patricia, you know, the theme of our show is all about mutual aid and solidarity. And can you share with us what are some concrete ways that we can stand in solidarity to support immigrant communities right now and the most vulnerable, and look after each other in this worldwide crisis?
Absolutely. Well, I just want to acknowledge the fact that for many of us, like you, Greg, and I don't know you, but I know you have been doing a lot of work too. we have been doing this for a long time. And I think that even when we're facing another crisis, we hope that this time is also going to give us hope and an opportunity to continue thinking about solidarity and love. I think that there are many concrete ways to support the immigrant community and refugees, right? To be a donor, to give food to a family that is in need right now, to support a community organization, to be part of a rally, to send letters to detention centers in order to put pressure and people that are managing the detention centers, to make sure that you're calling your elected officials and make sure that you let them know that you're not happy with the fact that undocumented immigrants are left behind, being left behind with this economic package. There are many things that you can do right now.
Thank you. Thank you. And also want to encourage folks in the, if they have questions, to put them into the Q&A at the bottom, and we'll be handling those in a few minutes. And I just want to shout out, we can see who's, at least the people who are calling in through the Zoom. I can't see who's participating on Facebook Live or who will see this on YouTube. But anyway, I see you all and love you all.
Thank you. Patricia, I also have a question regarding like where can families reach if there's any like, oh, I'm an immigrant family, my neighbor's an immigrant family, they're asking like, how can they get some support to pay their rent? Is there any fund or?
We're looking for a fund right now with local governments, as I said before, and other organizations. We're trying to put that together as soon as we can, because we know that families need that support right now, especially undocumented immigrants that are not going to be part of that package. At this point, we're receiving a lot of messages through Facebook. If people can send messages through the Facebook or Centro Presente through Messenger, and they can leave all the questions, phone numbers, and we definitely want to call them back to make sure that we're answering all the questions that they have. So, but right now we're trying, definitely desperate, to work with other organizations, and we want to create a fund, especially to support undocumented immigrants, because they are the ones that are not going to be receiving any support.
You can take that one, Greg.
Well, I just got a message texted over to me from saying that if you want to post questions on Facebook or on Twitter, if you're listening that way, that people can also post questions through that channel. So I get to do the postcard question?
Yeah.
Wow, this is the best question, which we ask at each episode. So, and Dave's giving to me, that's candy, which we all need a little candy right now. So Patricia, can you, this is a moment of both the biggest horror and the biggest, for the first time we're talking about freeing prisoners and in so long. And so it's a chance for radical ideas that to become possible right now. And so can you give us an image of that radical imaginary, or a postcard, a painting in your mind of the future that you are working for and dreaming for, that may be far out of reach some days, but still is that painting of the future?
Well, it's a very deep question, but I would like to see obviously changes, not just here. I would like to see changes also, well, in many places in the entire world, but I'm going to be specific, right? About Central America, for example. I would like to see governments that are not corrupt. I would like to see zero level of corruption and impunity. I would like to see, less levels of poverty. For example, in my country, I'm from Honduras, and between Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, there are three, I will say more than 30 million people, right, between these three countries, and more than 50% of them are living in poverty. I don't want to see that happening anymore, because that's why people come to the US without proper documents. And I would like to see in the United States, all migrants, all children, all women, all members of the LGBTQ community that are in detention centers free with their families, free with their families. That's the place where they should be right now and before. I don't want to see, detention centers that are making profit with the suffering of our communities. So that's my dream right now. And I hope that we're going to continue fighting for that to make, someday we had to see that happening. And I want to thank people like you that are putting together these kind of, conversations and using technology at this point to make sure that we're going to continue raising awareness about what is happening right now with our communities and what have been happening with our communities.
Muchas gracias, Patricia. Creo que vamos a abrir para la audiencia. We're going to open to the audience. Feel free to make your questions in English and in Spanish. Sorry that we don't have a translation, but hopefully we'll find a way of making this message out also and sharing it with immigrant communities that are Spanish speakers. Pero I think we might have some questions. Osvaldo?
Here, I got one here in the Q&A. It's this is from Holly Cachamuel, who is a dear old friend, and she says, I'm a middle school teacher and family liaison. I work with many undocumented families who are facing food and housing insecurity right now. Our school provides breakfast and lunch, thankfully. I know that I eat 3 times a day, so yeah, also rent is due. So this is another question about where rent is, where is help, and I'm wondering if people were to send money to Centro Presente, would that be would Centro Presente be in a position to distribute food help or medicine help to our most vulnerable?
Absolutely. I mean, I can give you my email. You can, I don't know if you can also share with them my email or my phone number, because we're actually working with churches, and tomorrow we have an emergency call with a congregation that is going to help us to raise some money to support some families because they need to buy food, and especially families that have children, they need to buy food right now. So I can definitely share my phone number, or they can also go to Centro Presente website, but I can give you my email address, that is pmontes@cpresente.org.
And can people donate online at Centro's website?
Definitely. If people want to support Centro Presente as an organization too, because we also need resources in order to continue doing our work, they can definitely donate. They can go to our website. And if they want to support if they want to support families through Centro Presente, they can definitely send me an email just to make sure that we understand that the funds that they are sending are going to families.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Day, can you see the question answer now? Okay.
Yeah, gracias. And we might have time for 1 or 2 more questions. So please go to the Q&A section. I'm taking Patricia Rodriguez's question. Thank you, Patricia. Since corporations are making lots of profit with ICE, and while the world is watching how the US healthcare system is broken, keeping detainees during a pandemic is not only a public health threat, it is also criminal. How can detainees leave ICE? Qué horror, qué horror. Thank you, Patricia y Centro Presente. And when we fight, we win team for the wonderful work. It gives me even more faith. So yeah, how can detainees leave ICE?
That's a very difficult question because, as we said before, they have a lot of power, and I'm going to repeat the names of the 2 corporations that have been receiving millions from the US government in contracts and governmental contracts in order to sustain the detention centers. And these 2 corporations are the Core Civic and the Geo Group. You need to know them. Go online, look for information, because these 2 corporations have been giving money to politicians. And these politicians are the ones that are against an immigration reform. They are the ones that are, supporting policies in order to detain and deport more people, because these corporations are making money. It's very hard for us to, free immigrants, right? To have immigrants with their families right now. But I think it's important to educate people about what is behind the incarceration of migrants, right? Because there is profit there, and of course, bad policies of bad leaders that are there, not just to support the people, but are, once again, to support corporations. These two names, we need to know them, and something that we can do, a concrete example. We're trying to organize. I was like, I don't want to give you that information because I don't want, but I will say it. We're trying to organize a protest here in Massachusetts in front of one of the detention centers, because as Greg said, this is a good moment, right? We need to let people know that these corporations are making money, that people at detention centers, they are families, they are workers, they are people that are fleeing violence, you know, they are not a threat to the security of the United States as the media and, you know, politicians have been presenting them. They are not a threat to the security of the United States. The threat are the corporations that are making millions with the suffering of our communities.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a wonderful answer and wonderful question. And I've been hearing about some of the protests that are going on, and now with people, since you can't show up at a protest in person, or you have to do it 6 feet apart, that some people are now showing up with cars and
That's
even
exactly
blocking
what we
access
have
to
to
the
do.
detention centers. Yeah. Yeah, so it's people are getting a little bit more creative right now. You know, one of the questions that I've had is, and it's been a theme of our upcoming podcast series that's about to be released next Wednesday, but we often talk on the podcast about a switch flipping in our brains where all of a sudden we begin to go, oh, I get it, or you know, your analysis changes or your ways of getting involved change. And so I'm wondering if you've had any flip switch, you know, when did things like come together in your brain and you began to see the root causes and the, you know, and the visions of the future?
Another difficult question. It's very analytic and, you know, connected with your heart and your brain. But I think that for me is I always think about the root causes of things, you know, like why this is happening. But I think that we can see this, as I said before, as an opportunity, because we need to reimaginar, I don't know how to say it in English, right? Reimaginar el trabajo que estamos haciendo, right? How are we going to do this in a different way, more radical? How that radical look is going to look like, right? But I think that it is a good opportunity to educate people, to let them know, listen, this is exactly what we have been doing, that the system is broken. So the system is broken. How are we going to fix it in a different way, right? How are we going to work together for a more just society? But how are we going to build a new society? I don't have the answer right now, but I think it's important to at least start asking ourselves what I'm going to do as an individual to change. And the next question is, what are we going to do together, right? In order to make, you know, achieve systemic change? Because I think that we have been talking about that for a very long time, right? The analysis is there, the questions are there, but we never find common, you know, ground to find solutions. But I think that right now, everything that we have been saying is public, you know? Now people can see from outside the US that we don't have a healthcare system that is public. It's true, you know? We're not, the news, they are the ones that are saying it. So that's something positive, that at least people in other countries know that this country, the US, is not ready, you know?
Thank you. Day, you got the next one from our audience?
Thank you. Do we have another one from our audience?
Yeah, there's one here from Isabel.
Okay. Is this the, yes, let me see. Okay. And let me know if we have time for more questions or if this is the last one so we can jump on.
I think we said we were going to go to just before 4 o'clock so we could take 1 or 2 more questions.
Okay.
And I certainly have a lot more questions for Patricia. Siempre.
See. So I'm taking Isobel. I don't know how to.
Spicer.
Okay. Thank you, Isobel, for your question. Is there any way we can get supplies to the detention centers or facilitate letters to the administrators?
That's a really good question. Supplies are not allowed at detention centers. They have very rigid protocols, but you can send letters. You can definitely send letters to the detention centers, and you can also send letters if you identify individuals that are in detention. You can also send letters to them. You can definitely send that through Centro Presente. You can also identify a detention center that is near to your city, you know, your state, and you can definitely do that. Supplies are not allowed.
Okay. And you is on your website, or can you give us places if people want to, push either our governor here locally or other federal officials or state officials or administrators? Is there a campaign going on now to pressure for the release?
We're actually, because we're working on articulating that campaign, but we're going to release information through our Facebook page very soon about a campaign that Centro Presente want to organize specifically about people in detention.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. And, because I know, I know Colorado the governor there issued 2 direct executive directives to give broad authority to release people from custody, including to release people who are within 180 days of parole. And in New Jersey, the Chief Justice ordered temporary release of 700 prisoners serving sentences across the state. And yeah, I think also South Carolina and Washington and Wyoming in particular, there have orders to reduce arrests. And now Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York was pressured to announce that he's going to release up to 1,000 people held in jail. And San Francisco said that the jail population has been reduced by 25% since the COVID-19 emergency was declared. And the DA, Chesa Boudin, has been speaking out to amplify the urgency of decarceration to prevent the virus transmission, and leading his office to act in accordance with the call. And so I'm wondering, excuse me, that's not the coronavirus. I'm okay, everybody. Get too excited though sometimes. And so I guess I'm just wondering, is there any detention centers that are now slowing the release, or is there any progress on where it's coming to detention centers?
Not in Massachusetts. No, that we don't have that information in Massachusetts. We know that there are organizations that are already, doing a lot of work. I just want to, congratulate the Brazilian Workers Center and Lawyer for Civil Rights, because recently they, they have a case of some people that are in detention, and they sent a formal letter. I'm not sure if they have a lawsuit, but they have a case there, and they are doing a lot of work. But we don't have, that information, at least in Massachusetts. That is not happening. We celebrate that other, local and state governments are doing that. I think it's extremely important to do that. And that's the right thing to do. Without or with coronavirus, that's the right thing to do, to release people that are in detention centers, people that are not necessarily, that they don't represent a threat to the United States.
Thank you for sharing this virtual space with us. Thank you again, Patricia, for being with us in this episode. Thank you for being in solidarity. Wondering how you can get involved to join the fight? Well, you can find videos that Patricia has made and more resources at whenwefightwewin.com. We hope that you will join us next Wednesday, same time, same place. Next week, we're speaking with Vanessa Lee and Ayana Alberg of Sisters Unchained. Sisters Unchained is a prison abolitionist organization dedicated to building community and power with young women affected by parental incarceration through radical education, healing, art, sisterhood, and activism.
You can join us next week via Zoom, YouTube, or Facebook Live. If you want to share this episode that you just listened to or others afterwards, we will be sharing this on Facebook at our website or wherever you get podcasts. In the meantime, look after each other and stay safe and well. And remember that also next Wednesday, April 8th, our first episode of When We Fight, We Win, the podcast, will be released. Reverend Sekou, whose music you heard today and will be our first guest, his music is the backbone of our whole show. So stay tuned, and I do encourage you to check out Patricia's videos They are really, really powerful. And you can see them and other resources at our website, whenwefightwewin.com.
This episode was produced by a great team that has been collaborating across continents. Osvaldo Boudet is the producer of the show. Yuri Losordo, our managing producer. One of our producers, Juan Carlos Davila, is helping us with technical support. Our artwork was created by Jose Hernandez Diaz, and our DJ is Jorge Diaz. Our theme music was generously shared by Reverend Seku.
Our social media is coordinated by Talia Carol Cachimuel. We'd like to thank our friends at the New Press, publisher of When We Fight, We Win. Many publishers are really suffering right now as so many bookstores are closed. The book is available online at our website and wherever books are sold. It's totally inspirational to come together, to collaborate, to work together for a more beautiful whole planet, and offer this show as a gift to you, our audience.
If you want to continue listening to Frontline Organizer stories, please share, subscribe, and follow us on social media at When We Fight, We Win on Facebook and Instagram, at We Fight and Win on Twitter. If you have something on your mind, want to share a concern, please email us at podcast@whenwefightwewin.com.